Hello, today I'm going to show you how to paint a simple watercolour of fruit without spending too much money. These lemons were less than £5 and you can freeze them or eat them afterwards. I'm starting with putting them in a glass bowl and painting them from the side so that I've got the interest of looking through the handmade glass and the reflections on the white napkins. I'm starting with lemon yellow. Having drawn it, I've rubbed it back in the area that I'm working with a putty rubber. When you're drawing through glass, the light can change very quickly and you do need to make yourself a map because you'll get one lot of reflections 1 minute and entirely different ones the next. So with the lemon yellow, I've gone round the edge of the first lemon I've chosen and then I've wet the brush and bring all the paint to the middle. Now moving on to chrome yellow, which is a much richer colour, I'm going over the top, again bringing the paint from the edge to the middle to give the shape and form of the lemon and just make it look much richer. Now I don't want them to bleed into each other, so I'm going to do the one at the back next. Again, going for the original shape and then looking for highlights and shadows. I've moved the bowl back a little bit on the cloth to make sure that I could film the bottom lemon. And the bottom lemon is catching the light more. So I'm going to start with the lighter lemon yellow, put it in, which makes it a good contrast to the one behind as well. And it's got a very light streak on it, which is the light coming through the glass, and a light tip. So I put those in. Now I'll go back to the middle, put some lemon yellow in very loosely, and I don't want a hard edge, so I'll add water. Go back to the chrome yellow, which is more orangey and darker for the back. And there's going to be shadow on top, which is from the edge of the bowl and the other lemons, so just put that in. I'm going gently to the edge. The others are fairly dry now. Now at the bottom there's a shadow and some refraction, so it's all a bit vague at the bottom. The lemons are two different sizes. I got 4 in a little net and 3 better loose ones, so they're different sizes and different shapes. And I need to just bring this down to a point. And again, I don't want that to bleed, so I'll go on to this one, which has got a little bit of a green end. So I'll pop the green in just very gently to claim space. That's because it's not quite ripe yet. It's very vague under here because there's a shadow, so I've claimed the space and then I can get the lines shortly. It's always best to claim a space. And this lemon here has got a lot of shadow on it, but I'm just going to pop it in, and I particularly like the fact that the way the glass has been moulded, that there's refraction here, so it actually looks like the lemon's got a dimple, and then in the glass there's 2 little yellow spots which I can put in later. The one underneath is a much more vibrant yellow because it's catching more light, so I've got to decide where to start and stop. Lots of shadows. There isn't anything showing except a shadow, so I'll take the yellow right up to the corner. And then add water just to move it around a little. And it looks a bit strange at the moment, but when the next coat of paint comes on, I'll get more shape and form. I'm going to give the lemons a second coat now of the same colours that I used before, but I'm building the shades up gently because it needs to be subtle to make it three-dimensional. So working from the darker area again, going up in the shape of the fruit. A little bit of water on a brush. I'm using a number 4 round brush here. I could use a bigger one, but then I might be a bit clumsy on the edges, so it's easier to use a smaller one. Then I'm going to the other end of the lemon, the pointy bit, put some yellow on there. Use the water just to take it back a little bit. And to show the difference, I'm going to use a different yellow on the knobbly bit here. Then I've got a very distinctive line going across because it's the refracted light through the glass. It's all good fun painted with glass. It's the same when you do a vase of flowers, that the light's all over the place. And I want to drop in a little bit more. There's more shadow down here. Let's use the water. If it goes on to the next one, just take it back with your finger. And a little bit of water just to find a lost edge. Watercolour is all about lost and found edges. So that can just have now some lemon yellow, the lighter one in the middle. More water. And that's instantly looking more three-dimensional. Now I'm going to go to this one now because I don't want them to bleed into each other. So I'll come to the one underneath, which is merging with this one because of the shadows. So what I've got to do is to put in a little bit of a grey line between the two of them to show that it's a shadow. I did do them all together when I put the first coat in, just to separate it from the clear glass. Again, more water and just pull it back a little. For the homemade grey, I've used Azilian Crimson, French Ultramarine and Yellow Ochre. And if you stir them all together into a puddle, you get a nice neutral grey, which you can tint if necessary with warm or cold colours, such as more yellow or more blue. I've carried on by putting a second layer and a tiny bit of shadow on this lemon. So I'm now left with this particular one, which, as it's nearer the glass, is a different colour. So it's got shadows going across it, and I'm working round with homemade grey, just putting a few little shadows on, and the yellow, as it has done here, will just react with it and send it back slightly. Just putting some lost and found edges with the water, and the chemicals in the yellow will find their own edge. And it's got shadow down here as well. There's light bouncing everywhere from a glass bowl. It's quite fun to do. Just work my way round. Follow the shape of what you're painting. Just keep going round and round and round. And when it dries, it will give more emphasis. on the shape. I'm going to tackle the reflections and shadows on the bowl. I've already put the yellow line in on the rim, and now there's a lovely bow-shaped reflection and shadow on the back of the bowl. If you find the biggest shadows and reflections, and then you can map the little ones off from them. There's a nice little reflection here of the cut-out handle. What they do in the glassworks is they just use a pair of pinchers to make this, so it's quite loose. That's all it needs to suggest it. And then working my way to the edge, slightly darker, and it goes up just to underneath the edge of the corner, and it's sort of a twist. Like a bent leaf. And then it becomes lighter, so I'll add some water. I'll take the pencil off afterwards here because it's quite tricky. And it's not the same shade all the way through. It goes light and dark. So I'll go over to the other side now, and I've got a very blue-grey on top, so I'm going to use a little bit of weak turquoise. And the first piece is where there was two little yellow blobs, which is where the glass maker has used his tongs to pinch the holes. So it's grey on one side and blue on the other. So I'll start with the blue, which livens the picture up nicely and matches the contrast with the lemons. So I'll just feather it out because I don't want it too bright. But we've got the shape of the bowl now. Then it changes to grey, so I'll go back to the homemade grey, add a little bit of blue. You can always keep tinting these things and work my way gently down the edge. Now the edge of the bowl is clear, so it's not necessarily going to have a definitive line, but I'm going to put one in and then work on it so that I've got the shape of the bowl. And I've got a shadow this side, and I've got turquoise coming back in again in the middle. So I'll just follow the turquoise down the middle, and it stops at the point of the lemon. Then it goes back into shadow underneath and goes around the other lemon. Artists from the past, some of the impressionists, would use royal blue or French ultramarine for shadows, but it's amazing if you've got a piece of glass in front of you how many colours you can find. And then there's a little gap and more reflection, and a little bit more, and it's just all picking up the lemon. And on the edge here it just feathers out completely, so I'll very weak turquoise and just do a few strokes with gaps just to suggest it. And it virtually disappears at the bottom here, so what I can do is just go back over and with some tissue just mop it slightly. I don't want to do the bottom yet, I want to concentrate on the other side, which is picking up a little bit of turquoise again and lots of dark because I'm going off the edge of my work table. So I will put the turquoise in first. And I can rub back when it's dry. I can't do the dark until it's dried, so I can move on a bit. I've got more turquoise, just a thin bit of turquoise, going down the middle. And then it's almost clear water here, but I'll put it in just to show there's something there. The white paper is going to do a lot of the work for this picture. Now the bottom, the lines are going across the way it's been formed. What I can do at the top is with grey and a little bit of turquoise mixed together is the top of the handle and the top of the one this side. Now that the very blue edge of the glass is dry, I can put in the dark shadow, because this is a white cloth and that's a dark background. So I've got dark showing through the glass. I'm using a mixture of Payne's grey, homemade grey and a little bit of French ultramarine because I just want a non-distinct dark colour. And I have got a straight line down here through the refraction. Just give it a wobbly edge. You could do this with a glass cooking bowl if you haven't got a glass fruit bowl. This actually finishes level with the bottom of the lemon. Always look and find something that it's so that it looks more natural. I'm just going to use some plain water and just feather it out a little bit. And I've got the same very dark in the cutout of the handle here. That's the reflection of it, but the handle cutout is actually down here. And that goes to a point and then all the way back. It's quite a thick reflection. And then goes up to the top. So because it's quite thick, it's got a couple of little lines in it, so I'm just going to use some neater paint straight from the pan. And then I've got more lines here that are slightly lighter, so mixing a little bit more blue in the paint, going around. And there's a little line from it there as well. And then over here I've got some very interesting lines that are quite light, almost like petals. Put those in. And then there's a more reflection up here which I can do without smudging it. I've painted the dark corner with burnt umber and Payne's grey, which helps bring the bowl forward. So this one, just going to put a line here that's got some reflection of the lights and the glass. Just put it in very lightly, wipe the brush off, and then just take the paint for a walk, because you want a subtle line. And then there's a seam where it's folded over. That's actually more grey, so I'm using Payne's grey and French ultramarine mixed together for the seam. And again, wipe the brush off, just dab it and just pull the line back a little, make it slightly more subtle. And a little bit more. that seems fine. Then there's a fold here where it's actually raised. So what I want to do is make the fabric that's underneath slightly cream because it's getting reflection from the lemons. So I'm just going in with lemon yellow, but I don't want it to be bright, so I'm going to add some Naples yellow. If you haven't got Naples yellow, use yellow ochre. When you're painting anything with glass, you get bounce light and surprising shadows everywhere. That separated it from the bit on top. The bit on top has got a few light grey folds and creases. And again, using the water, just take them back out so they're hardly noticing. And then further round, we've got even more yellow because it's closer to the bowl. I've just mixed lemon yellow and a little bit of yellow ochre because it's in shadow of another piece of cloth, so it's quite dark in one place. And then just water to bring it down again. Water up the top, and then what I'm going to do is just dab it back. I've got some kitchen roll with a folded edge, so I'm going to put that on from the top and lighten it so the bit that's in the bottom looks darker. And then take the paint all the way around, just dragging it if any of it will come. And then there's a very yellow bit right underneath the bowl. You have to keep looking and finding things. And then at the front we've got a very deep shadow. I'll pop that in. And what I'm trying to do is keep the emphasis on the lemons and just make the subtle changes to the top. I've got a larger shadow outside the bowl, the yellow from the lemon, and it goes all the way down to the bottom of the bowl. So I'm putting in grey and blue mixture. Then I'm going to drop some yellow in to find its own way with the chemicals reacting against each other. Well, then there's all sorts of ripples of reflections here, but I don't want it to run, so I'm just going to let that dry a moment. Having chased lots more folds, we don't want to distract from the lemons, so I'm going to stop there. And the next thing to do is there's some dark shadows on the lemons from the light coming through the top of the bowl. So I'm going to use a flat brush and some Payne's grey and a little bit of yellow ochre in it, and just follow the line of the shadow. So I'll start here. There's one going right across the middle. Let's do it in one go. Don't touch it again. And then there's another one over here. And then the one down here has got the shadow on the bottom. And there's a fainter one on this one. And this one has got lots of stripes, which again are shown on the cloth. It's just the way the handmade glass is picking up the light. And then slightly darker tip. And then there's more shadow right underneath this one where they overlap. Sometimes less is more, so don't worry about everything. I'll let those dry for a minute and then check the tones. With the handmade glass, the lemons pick up all sorts of refracted light, and so does the cloth, or in this case napkins I've got behind it. So it's a very good exercise in looking, and things aren't always as you expect. If you wanted to brighten it up any more, you could add lemons on the outside of the bowl as well, but I wanted you to look in. If you just want to make a little highlight on the lemons where there is reflected light, just get the kitchen roll and damp it with some clean water and just rub slightly, and you see that you've just lightened it a little. Just gives a little highlight.